Attention, we are going to get started shortly. We're going to get started shortly. Now, in fact. And here's Darby.
I don't think it matters if I step over. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to give it just a minute to see if that will go away. I just might be that magnetic. I mean, you never know. Don't touch it. Okay. Okay, I think we can start. Hello, everybody. I'm going to ask for a red coat in the back. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so very much for being here today. Today, we are celebrating Dress. We are celebrating a man whom we all loved very deeply. We are celebrating a man who enjoyed getting everybody together, who enjoyed having his worlds collide. And so it's very fitting that we are all here, either here or online, from all different walks of life, to celebrate him in one of his favorite places, the Memorial Union. We are going to be your Emcees for the next 45 minutes to an hour. My name is Darby Sugar, and I have known Leslie and Chris for over 20 years. I consider them some of my best friends.
Good afternoon. My name is Tracey Maloney, and I was a friend of Chris's since we met as sophomores in college, who rode together, but also lived in the closest darn dorm to the boathouse, Adams Hall. We were pretty bright then. He was a fierce, giving, and unconditional friend, as you all know. While we will forever mourn his loss, today is the day to celebrate him and carry the stories forward.
A few quick announcements. There are some fun things around the room. There are tattoos, temporary tattoos and stickers of Dressler's tattoo. Oh. You'll hear about, if you don't know about the tattoo, you're going to hear about it a little later. There's a round sticker of a Bloody Mary and a beaker. That should make sense to most of you in the room. There is a postcard with Leslie's address on it, and you can write in stories. As we all know, Dressler was an amazing storyteller. Please use this postcard either through the QR code that's on the postcard or by, old school handwriting it on the postcard and mailing it in. There's also a mini program. It's the size of a business card. The QR code on there will take you to the Fun Stuff tab on the website. Some of you might have seen it. You'll find things like a link to the music you're hearing today. It's actually a compilation of a lot of Dressler's favorite songs. You'll see some videos on the Fun Stuff tab. You'll be able to share stories, and there'll be a place for you to sign a digital guest book. There's also an actual hard copy guest book around the room today on the tables. Please feel free to sign that as well if you'd like.
The slideshow is on a repeating loop and will also be available on the website after the event. So if you've missed anything, don't fret. Today we have a total of 5 speeches. This is very important, so please listen up. Those in the back in red coats, let's just say that. Please silence your phones. That means you have to take them out and turn them off. Please do this so that we can ensure that we have a good recording for those that are joining us on Zoom and for the recording that we will keep for posterity. Please be kind enough to not talk during the speeches, including while you're refilling at the bar. Yes, the bar will remain open during the speeches, but please don't talk. Please don't record on your phone. It's like I said, it'll be available after the event. This is especially important so we can continue to view this for years to come. I just want to repeat that sometimes. That helps to remember. And finally, please know that after the final speaker, we will conclude the program with a toast from Leslie.
All right, so that's it for the nitty-gritty announcements. Let's get on to the speeches. Starting with family. Family was a very important part of Dressler's life. It's very fitting that the first up is Leslie's sister, Lisa, Rattan rootstock, and Tio Tubes, a Rattan family bolt-on. Lisa, Tio.
I didn't do the microphone check. Is this okay? Okay. I really hit the jackpot when it comes to having a brother-in-law. I'd never had a brother before, but I'm pretty sure you can't land a better one than Dressler. I also had the good fortune to know Dress before it was related to me. It was in the capacity that many of us knew him as a teacher. He was one of my coaches as an MRC junior rower, and when he learned that Les and I were accomplished sailors, he encouraged us both to apply to be Hoofer sailing instructors. At the time, I was an insecure 16-year-old. I didn't have the self-confidence to apply, but because Dress encouraged me, I wrote up a resume and sent it in. To my shock, I got the job. With Dress as one of my mentors, I learned many important transferable life skills, and I became part of this incredible community, many of whom are here today. When I look back on the impact of those years, it's with heartfelt gratitude toward Dress for believing in me. Okay, but we're here to talk about family. So fast forward a few years. Les and Dress fall in love. Dress becomes part of our family. Here's the Rattan family with 2 adjectives each because we don't have much time. Grammy, our matriarch, wild, social. Grampy, our patriarch, thoughtful, intelligent. They had 4 kids. Neil, fun, crazy. Eric, my dad, artistic, crazy. Mark, smart, crazy. And Martha, loving, crazy. Grammy and Grampy raised their family in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and around the time I was born, they purchased property and started spending summers on Bailey Island, Maine. It was in these places over many years we developed our strongest family traditions, including mountain croquet, highly competitive Scrabble, boats of all kinds, elaborate parties, and the establishment of our family cocktail, the Blue Margarita. Each of Grammy and Grampy's 4 children is wonderful in their own way, but one of the best contributions to the family has been in bringing in a bolt-on. In our family, we have rootstock, those of us born into it, and we have bolt-ons. Bolt-ons are the incredible people who love us, but thankfully, they're not us. They balance the family dynamic and bring out the best in it. So these 4 kids of Grammy and Grampy and their respective bolt-ons ushered in the next generation, the cousins. Les and I are the oldest of the cousins, and Les was by far the first to marry and introduce her own bolt-on into the family. Integrating into a family isn't easy, and our family is no exception. One summer out in Maine, we embarked on building a garage, studio, bunkhouse, event space. To this day, we still can't all agree on what the function of this building is. The construction crew was Dressler, Schroeder, my dad, and me. It was awesome. We ate bacon every morning. We had beers at lunch, and we cooked everything in bacon fat. We got to use power tools. We formed the foundation, framed the walls, and put a roof on it. About halfway through framing, I realized Dressler was not having a good time. The problem, it turns out, was there were no plans. Not a single drawing, elevation, sketch, or any kind of visual representation of what we were building. Everything we did was all in my dad's head. My dad, an accomplished builder, also the crazy artist one. What I took for a normal Rattan family project was in fact pretty fucked up. especially if you're an engineer. So how do we get from there to Dressler being a completely integral member of our family? I asked a few of the cousins this question, and I got the same answer again and again. Dressler listened and engaged with genuine interest. He wasn't going through the motions. Cousin Gina described showing Dress the pictures from her sweet 16 birthday party, and he actually wanted to see them. Cousin Quinn remembers at age 8 that Dressler took his 8-year-old thoughts and ideas into serious consideration. Quote, "He wasn't just bullshitting me." Just a couple years ago, Dressler met one of cousin Luke's friends, and on hearing of Dressler's death, the friend commented that Dressler was so smart, but the way he asked questions and included you were right there with him. Much like Dress inspired younger me to have confidence and be the best version of myself, he inspired our generation of cousins to be better Rattans. He brought everybody into his circle, and with unbridled enthusiasm, he threw himself into our family traditions, and he made them better. We play mountain croquet. He plays mountain croquet with a blue margarita in a measuring cup. He says it is against the rules to put it down. We have boats. He hauls a trailer fully loaded with boats out east each summer. We have a family cocktail. He introduces us to his family cocktail, a finely crafted Bloody Caesar that Grampy immediately embraced and dubbed the Dressler. And now here's Tio to tell us more about bolt-ons.
Tio Tubes! That's the way Dressler always said Tio Tubes in the house. And everything that Lisa just said, you knew it was on. Dressler was gonna have fun. He was gonna make everybody happy. And he added so much to this family. We can't imagine the fact that he has come and blessed us all by being him. He had a superpower, and I've got some superpowers over here, but the most important superpower that he had was that ability to connect to people. He could connect to people all around the country, even the very interesting people in Maine. They basically are very suspicious of outlanders. But he was able to embrace Maine fishermen, Maine lobstermen, and they became friends of his immediately. It's the most wonderful power that anybody can have, and it was at the core of Dressler. So that's one that everything else follows from. But I also want to point out some of his other, maybe lesser superpowers. He had many of them. One was the whole idea of the fact he could trailer anything. He could put a 30-foot boat in a 10-foot slip and he wouldn't hit anything. It was amazing. I'm pretty sure that on his driving test, he had a trailer attached and he nailed the K-turn. I'm sure. The second superpower that many of you probably have seen, his ability to pack. He could pack so much stuff in the Suburban when he came out to Maine. It would be like a clown car. Stuff would be spilling out. He was like a Tetris Zen master in how he could pack. But he also, as an engineer, he had the measurement, the famous loose packing quotient. The number of loose items divided by the number of containers is the loose packing quotient. And as you see, everyone, all the scientists here, this is an asymptotic equation. That is, it's never zero. And Dressler would be pissed off when something came flying into the cabin because he braked hard. And we all know Dressler was a safety nut. What was his saying? It's like, be prepared, don't be scared. And he taught people safety all the time. He taught his kids to think ahead and say, that's not a really safe thing to do. So he taught me how to drive a boat, and I'm not a boat guy. But one of his toolbox things that he had was the ability to tie a knot. He could tie all kinds of knots. He could lash things to things, and it was always an important skill that he had. And you see him here where he's applying that skill as a telephone lineman, putting an Ethernet cable well beyond the limits of Ethernet between two cottages in order to help another bolt-on off who was needing 300 megabits per second to do his job. So that particular construction has been there since the height of COVID in 2020. 3 years later, through many windstorms, it's still there, providing service. So what you really want to know is about the origin story of the bolt-on. So the bolt-on concept is one of Dressler's most enduring inventions. I don't want to like say that the turbo tap wasn't great, but this is one that's gonna last forever. Dressler and I were hanging around on the deck, which is a beautiful place. Feet back, and we're just basically looking out at the beautiful ocean. And he just looked at me and he said, "Tubes, we're the luckiest men on the planet." And he goes on to say, "We both have beautiful, talented wives. We have a wonderful set of kids." And Dressler loved my kids. I love his kids, and they're just fantastic. And this family, what about this family? Oh my God, this is just awesome. And I looked at him and I said, "Yeah, you know, we kind of won that lottery, that life lottery. That's really good." And then I could see him kind of going, "We're attached to the family," and you see him clicking off the thesaurus, going, "Attached, blah, 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 blah." And he looks at me and he goes, We're bolted onto them." And then we go, we're bolt-ons. And that was it. That was the beginning of the whole thing. So Dressler, and believe it or not, this slide deck that we chose had a slide in it with a quote from Walt Disney. And the quote said, "You got to stop talking and start doing." And that's Dressler 100%. I think Walt Disney stole it from him. The end result is within days, he had already done a hypervector graphic for the bolt-on logo. He called some, probably misused resources back in Wisconsin. And the next thing I know, Federal Express, we have decals for our beloved boat. So we have a boat. It's an 18-foot Boston whaler with 150 horsepower in the tail. How crazy is that? That was found by Dressler's brother out here. He, of course, trailered it out to Maine. And that boat, we love that boat. So if you look at the picture, what you have is you have 4 bolt-ons, 2 generations of bolt-ons, attaching a decal of a bolt-on to the SS bolt-on. That's a triple bolt-on. So what's happened is the bolt-on concept continues to evolve. Bolt-ons get added, more and more bolt-ons are coming into the family, and bolt-ons are inviting their family and friends to be bolt-ons. So those are double bolt-ons. So I just want to say, you're a bolt-on. You're a bolt-on. People on the internet, you're bolt-ons now. Because we're all together as a family celebrating this wonderful human being. And we're thanking you all for being here and loving this guy and loving this family. And that's what the bolt-ons do. We support the Rattans support us, and we're going to make a huge impact. That's all there is to it. And I want to thank you all for being here on behalf of the family. We're really, really happy to see this outpouring of love, and thank you very much.
Moving on to college, our next speaker was a former rower and automatic friend. He doesn't need much introduction. Wagner, or how he is better known to all of us that are rowers, Wags. The mic is yours.
Whoa. Whoa. Well, Dress was quite the impressive guy, and he gets an impressive turnout. Not surprising. He went by many names to many people. Some might have called him Chris or Christopher as a kid, but doubtful. Dressler, Dress, the Doctor, the Dirty Doctor. Then, when he actually received his doctorate, after a riveting discussion of experimental determination of heat transfer coefficients and oscillatory two-phase annular flow, we naturally had to call him Dr. Dirty Doctor. Husband, dad, papa. As Leslie said, Dress was a big man with a big heart and a big intellect, so he's getting a big obit. And he, rightly so, got one. There are various speakers today making comments about the big man, and I'll hit on a couple of the highlights from chapter 2, titled UW-Madison. Specifically some of the rowing aspects. I may overstep my bounds and dip into chapter 3, titled After College. Anyway, I arrived at the Badger Boathouse in the fall of 1991, along with a throng of about 125 other mostly tall and some really short guys for freshman crew tryouts. Godfrey Miles Clark and I were the only experienced guys there among former high school standout and maybe sit-out football, basketball, swimming, and track guys. Oh, and one bike racer guy with shaved legs, a mullet, and wearing a skin-tight one-piece racing singlet. And I mean skin-tight. You might remember those Sports Illustrated swimsuit editions where they were really pushing the envelope and the models were like body painting on the bikinis? Just like that. Only instead of Kathy Ireland or Elle McPherson, Dressler. Even Coach Gain, our freshman coach at the time, was bewildered by the guy. And he would say, "Hey, Dressler." See, when you're doing the Gain imitation, he had this mustache back then. The guy was kind of a maniac. He's a normal person now. But back then, he was kind of a maniac. He'd be, "Hey, Dressler, what are you doing? And what the fuck are you wearing?" And there was a lot more other swear words in there, but I'm going to keep it PG. Anyway, certainly we're not paying this guy any attention. No way he sticks with it. Well, how wrong we were. And in that determined Dressler fashion, he hung in there and made a boat. Making a boat also means that you were issued row trowel from the socks and jock guy in the boathouse. Thank God for Dressler. I mean, sure, it's a 5-year-old reject gear from the football team, but for Dress, a huge upgrade from his Tour de Black River Falls unitard. Telling you, things are really coming together for the guy. Moved on from the acid wash jeans, the jorts, the acid wash shorts, the hard to run in high tops, and he adopted his now famous Carhartt look. You know, he would take a girl on a date and he orders a nice Cabernet instead of Jägermeister shots. Now the mullet didn't stand a chance. Captain Meyer claimed it was a Badger rowing freshman tradition that everyone buzzes their hair off, and that he, Meyer, would do the shearing. Now, for those of you at home who are fact-checking, that is not, I can assure you, not a rowing tradition, except for maybe our year. Well, alas, there goes Meyer, and the Dress's Kentucky waterfall just washed away. In all seriousness, Dress became an integral part of the crew team as a rower for four of his six infamous undergraduate years, and he rowed and competed in the Frosh, the varsity, the JV, the fours, and maybe even the pair in all 4 years. Not many do that. During those years, as a Big Ten scholar athlete, we were fortunate to race both here in Madison and train, but also around the country. And it seemed as if more often than not, Dress and I were roommates on these trips, or more specifically, bedmates. I think it's safe to say that apart from our spouses, we have slept with each other more than anyone else. Back in those days, head coach Jabbo had us on a pretty tight budget, so Dress and I honeymooned at some of America's most romantic accommodations, including the Austin, Texas Sheraton, the Navy Barracks at Coronado Islands, Western Ranch Motel in Syracuse, New York. But by far and away, our and the team's favorite spot was the place that usually rented out by the hour, but Jabbo cut a deal, the Worcester City Motel. Sadly, it has since been condemned. Now, for those of you who have never had the pleasure of sleeping with Dress, it's quite an experience due to two main factors. Number one, we were most likely in a double bed. You will recall my previous Jabbo Cheapo comments. Sorry, frugality. Hence, your two big dudes are snuggling, and the nightly discussions revolved around who was the big spoon and who was the little spoon. Number two, equally frightening, Dress slept without fully closing his eyes. So if you're in bed with the guy, either back to back or butt to butt, no problem. But imagine a scenario where you roll over and you are face to face with Dress with these beady little eyes open just a little bit. He got spittle coming from his snoring lips. He's got a Granny Smith-sized Adam's apple coming out at you. It's like, whoa! That'll get you going in the morning. His unwavering positive attitude, consummate leadership, friendship, and guidance helped shape the Badger Crew program, and more importantly, his fellow teammates into all-around better people. One could not hope for a better brother in arms. As we put this college nonsense behind us, well, undergrad for Dress, because the guy never really left, he continued with his outdoor and athletic pursuits. Assistant coach for the Badger Crew team, sailor, kayaker, biker, skier, and frequent Madison half marathon runner. I use the word runner loosely. Jogger. Let's go with jogger. Now, I realize there are a great deal of you in the room who are considered runners. You know who you are. You're not shy about telling us not runners who you are. So thank you. But for us joggers, running a half marathon is not an intriguing prospect, but doing one with Dressler, well, that's a different story. For a handful of years, Dress would contact me and my semi-runner wife, Mar, about 6 months in advance to start planning/training. Now, I know a bunch of you real runners have done the Madison full and half marathon a bunch of times. You have your training schedules and your Sunday morning running clubs and your sleek tank tops and your short shorts, and you post your runs on the Strava app to fawn over. Well, I'm talking about something totally different. Dress would send out weekly emails saying that this was the week we would start training. Only to follow it up the next week saying, no, seriously, this week we start training. Then he would schedule a Monday morning call to talk about the training at 11 a.m. But there's always seemed to be confusion. Was it 11 a.m. Eastern time? Was it 11 a.m. Central time? So that went out the window. So then we just went back to the email saying, no, seriously, this week we start training. But then, as all of us elite runners know, there's a tapering down period before that. That part we nailed every time. A 2.5-hour run can be painful and boring, but running through Madison with Dressler, it seemed as if the guy was the mayor. He knew every spectator on the street, and they knew him. And of course, he enthusiastically greeted all of them, and then would tell us stories for the next half mile or so about the person who just gave us a bite of a brat and a gulp of Leinenkugels. Then we would run past a nondescript building through campus and would remind him of a funny story from a fluid dynamics class he had there. As he chatted, the miles flew by, and before you knew it, the three of us would be crossing the finish line at the exact same time, longing for more Dressler stories. He was everything you wanted in a friend, deeply curious, fascinatingly interesting, wicked smart, and outrageously funny. I need more Dressler stories. Wally, Cece, and Les need more Dressler stories. Everyone needs more Dressler stories. Keep telling them. I miss you and love you, buddy. Sis Puma, Dressler. Sis Puma. Let's give him a big one. Boom! Ah! Dressler! Thanks.
Not sure what to say. A little bit of a tough act to follow. My apologies to the next speaker. Okay. Moving on to the engineering chapter. As if there was a chapter that did not include engineering. As we all know, Dressler was a scientist and an engineer through and through. The world existed to Dressler in vector form, and only vector form. He would be thrilled and honored to know that one of his 2 mechanical engineering PhD students was speaking today. Roman, come on up.
How the fuck do I follow that? George Carlin in front of me. All right. Well, I'm gonna do what I do best and get nerdy with you guys. So let me see if I got my PowerPoint up. All right, excellent. All right, so thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for coming to celebrate Dress. But in order to properly continue with this discussion, we should have done this earlier. So we're gonna get some proper definitions and make sure everyone's on the same page. So from henceforth, let Dr. Christopher M. Dressler equal Dressler equal Dress equal D. These terms will be used interchangeably throughout this presentation, and they should be considered equivalent. So I have a speech written, and we'll get to some of it. But last night, I received a phone call, and the result of the phone call was a bit of a change in the direction of this conversation, and I believe it's for the best. So today, I'm going to honor Dressler in a way that I think he would appreciate, a discussion about mathematics and fluid mechanics. So on August 29th of 2019, Dress got his first, and to my knowledge, only tattoo. I know this because I was there to hold his hand through the experience. Actually, Dress and I went to go get tattoos together in anticipation for the upcoming semester. Dress and I both taught fluid mechanics in the fall of 2019, ME 363 here at UW-Madison, and we were both stoked. You guys will get that later. About teaching, and we wanted to get these tattoos to commemorate the semester. So there's 3 major components, if this works. So there's 3 major components to this tattoo. The first part is a sine wave. The sine wave is representative of Dressler's affinity for mathematics, and specifically trigonometry. He loved the way that math could be used to describe the universe. Super nerdy, super cool. The second part, sorry, I gotta shine this laser at somebody at some point too, in Dressler fashion. But the second part, so in the middle of the tattoo, there's actually a slight transition from a sine wave to what's called a Stokes wave. I'm sure all you guys caught that right away, that there's But a Stokes wave, I'm gonna tell you, a Stokes wave is actually used to model the ripples that travel across like water surface waves. And they're slightly different than a normal sinusoidal wave. The troughs are a little flatter and the peaks are a little steeper. But these are used to actually model waves. And so these in particular show his affinity for fluid mechanics. And the next part is the ocean wave. Is that clear? And the ocean wave has a few points of interest. So in waves like the Stokes wave that we all just learned about and are totally comfortable talking about, when they start to break up and spill over, we refer to this as an instability in fluid mechanics. These big spilling waves that occur are also related to the research that Dressler and I perform in our lab. So why this specific image of a wave spilling over? Well, White Claw was on sale at Quick Trip that week. I'm kidding. He chose this wave actually because of the realistic representation of what wave breakup looks like. The fact that the White Claw looks like that is actually coincidental. It just means that they also have a nerd on their team. But the ocean wave is representative of Dressler's love for being in, on, or around the water. Namely, spending time with his family in the Orange Crush, cruising Lake Mendota, and especially in Maine, at the family compound, as he would call it. If you put this whole thing together, this tattoo is representative of Dressler. He's a nerd, he's curious, and he loves his family. Do we click? So Dress was my teacher, my mentor, my strongest ally, one of my best friends. I would not be at UW-Madison, let alone getting my PhD, if not for the fact that he believed in me. I was able to discover things that I'm passionate about, real nerdy shit, because of the opportunities that Dress gave me. I'm forever grateful that for some reason he decided that the punk kid with tattoos who walked into his class smelling skunky was worth taking a chance on. This is the part where I reminded myself to breathe. So Dress has shaped the person I am today, quite literally. I am thankful for the time that we spent together and the opportunity I had to learn from him. When I went back to MATC, I only wanted a degree so I could go coach high school baseball. That was my goal. And instead, Dressler ignited a passion for math and science in me that was likely to remain dormant for the rest of my life. And to bring this thing from 0 to 2 pi, or full circle for the less nerdy ones here, I'll be coaching, or I'll be one of the coaches on Wally's baseball team for this upcoming spring. So very excited. However, I am one of many. Dressler's infectious enthusiasm about math and science and his ability to convey information in a relatable manner was unlike anybody else I've ever met. He was UW-Madison's Bill Nye, the science guy in real life. And so I'd like to end with a little bit of a toast, if that's okay. We're gonna do this in groups, so if you're not a part of the first group, that's okay. I bet everybody else is a part of the second one. And so first, could I have any former Dressler students stand if you're here, or raise your cup if you're in the back? Perfect. Now, for anyone else who has had the opportunity to learn from Dressler in any capacity, let us all toast to the wonderful life of Dress and the many that he has inspired. He lives on through all of us. I love you, big guy.
The next presenter brings things full circle. Dress and Ben met in 1999 when Dee coached Ben at UW. And as with coaching, there's a lot of teaching and learning going on. Fast forward 24 years later, where Wally and Cece have been learning from Mr. Kaker as their elementary school teacher at Crestwood. Lucky students all around. Come on up.
Oh, all right. Oh, wow. Everyone can hear me okay, right? All right, good. Cakes. That's what Dress called me. Most of my good friends, teammates from college, call me Kaker. But to Dressler, it was always Cakes. It's only been a short time. But man, I miss the conversations, the jokes, the questions, the teasing, and just being called Cakes. Coming from him, it was just special. I know I'm not the only one in this room who got a nickname. He had a way of making you feel special. Cakes. Chris Dressler was my coach, my mentor, my teacher, and more than anything, my friend. I've known him for over 20 years, and his influence, his direct impact, absolutely made me a better person, all because of the amazing person that he was. The fall of 1999 was the first time our lives intersected. Coach Dressler was hired as University of Wisconsin's assistant varsity coach. Dress coached for the 99 to 2001 seasons. One of the main responsibilities of the assistant varsity coach was the task of coaching small boats in the spring. The small boats were made up of any of the remaining oarsmen who weren't in the top 2/8. Looking back on it, this could not have been an easy task. What a bunch of personalities he had to deal with. You know, I'd equate coaching Wisconsin rowers to a cross between like teaching preschool and observing a fraternity at bar time. So you never knew what was going to come out of any of their mouths or where that smell came from. And you should never, ever underestimate the lack of common sense of a bunch of dudes hanging out in one location. Once seats were earned for small boats, Dress would take roughly 5 or 6 Cox 4-man shells on the water for practice. That's when the true Dressler magic started. He was boathouse famous for his audible pauses while coaching. You know, something about complaining about where something is, or where's Remington? Or just go get hands on. So, once we were on the water, Dress's opening message was often similar to that of an airline pilot trying to ease tension of nervous passengers. He would often begin practice by something like the following. So he'd grab his megaphone and, gentlemen, it's 5:47 a.m. The water temperature is 56 degrees. The winds today are coming out of the northwest at 2 to 5 miles an hour. Today we'll be doing between 6 and 18 racing pieces. They will be done at varying rates with possible varying times. There may or may not be seat exchanges. Coxswains, point your bows towards the southwest part of the lake. Meanwhile, the coxswains are looking around like, what the southwest part of the lake? And Coach Dress would realize the error of his instructions, simply say, just the water tower. Just point on the water tower. And coxswains would raise a hand, a line, and once the line, we'd row. Practices often had that kind of feel. Or in the words of Coach Clark, they were always a classic boondoggle. Dress would give us compliments when we needed them and get on us when we needed it. He was very approachable both before and after practices, often advising on what could be done to go faster and even add a spark of encouragement. The results of Coach Dress's small boats speak for themselves. In Dress's 2 years coaching small boats at Wisconsin, of the 10 events entered at IRAs or men's nationals, 7 won gold, 2 took silver, and 1 placed 4th. A well-known coach. A well-known coach from another team even commented, "You must be the winningest coach in the history of small boats." Dressler was my coach. Dressler was always my teacher. When Les and Dress moved back to Madison several years later, I was coaching at Camp Randall. Camp Randall. Yeah. a local high school rowing club. It wasn't long until Leslie made her way down to the boathouse to coach. That's where the relationship with the Dresslers really blossomed. It was a pretty sweet 2-for-1 deal for me. The Dresslers definitely made their mark on the Madison rowing community. Things Dress taught me. Number 1, how to set up a racing course. GPS, buoys, ropes, cinder blocks, binoculars, Schlitz tall boys. The buoys weren't always straight, but the distance, thanks to Dressler, was always 2,000 meters. Number 2, how to make my high school rowers faster. Dressler would occasionally accompany me on the water and offer his insight. I always appreciated his feedback. He helped make me a better coach. Number 3, how to make blue. A delicious, sneakily strong, margarita-inspired drink. In fact, and this is where Fred comes in, the first time I had it, the last thing I remembered hearing was, careful cakes, it can bite you. Yeah, blue bites hard. I should have listened to Dress. And number 4, how to fix trailers. Dress was the god of trailers and all things trailering. If you got on the subject of trailers, his entire face would light up. He and I changed the bearings and tires of my boat trailer, my dad's boat trailer. Could I do it again by myself? Maybe. But it was a heck of a lot more fun with him there. And number 5, how to take care of outboard engines. If trailers are number 1, outboard engines were a close number 2. Winterizing the outboards always took much longer than they should have with brandy old fashions or whatever. And this is now a job I can do independently, but it's way less cool without Dress there. Dressler was my teacher. Dress was also our social coordinator. It was always the more the merrier for him. He and Leslie were always planning get-togethers, from impromptu fish fries, backyard shenanigans, happy hours, winter solstice celebrations, hot tub hangouts, camping adventures, and frescarita tastings. There was always fun and laughs to be had with Dress. It's very telling who you decide to surround yourself with in life. Dress and Les surround themselves with some of the kindest, most genuine, interesting, creative, fun people I've ever met. Many of whom have become friends. It takes a village. And man, Les, look around. You guys built an amazing village together. And you know what? You also made some amazing people. Dress was a supportive parent, a great dad. I've been a teacher at Crested Elementary for 21 years. 21 years, oh Jesus. Over that period of time, I've been fortunate to teach some of my friends' children. It's always enjoyable for me to see the likenesses to their parents and also how each individual chooses to raise their children. For Dress and Les, it's not about test scores and advanced academics. They care about raising a good person and good, kind, amazing children they are. I was fortunate to have Wally for 2 years back-to-back as a second and third grader. Back-to-back Wally. Love it. Wally's fun-loving, extremely bright, and always the life of the party. If you can't hear Wally cackling down the hallway, something is seriously wrong. When we have any classroom discussion, I was always amazed by the insight and background knowledge of Wally. I even remarked to Dress and Les, it's not always when, as an elementary school teacher, you recognize that a second grader is smarter than you are. And yeah, it's true. It didn't take me long to see the parts of Dress and Wally. Like his father, Wally's social, life of the party driven by logic, a problem solver, lover of the outdoors. He's always thinking, always trying to advance a lesson or idea. Right after Wally graduated from third grade, I am now the teacher of CC. Unlike her brother, CC is often quiet, peaceful in her own thoughts. She's not as verbally forthcoming with how she's feeling, but what I see in Cece, like Dress, is someone who wears her heart on her sleeve. A creator, artistic, gentle, kind to all. She's an animal whisperer and has an unbelievable imagination. Of the many strengths Cece has from her father, the one that sticks out the most is just how persistent she is. Oh man, when Cece is determined to do something, there is no stopping her. I dare anyone in here to try. Dress's kids were everything to him. He loved them both with all of his being. This last November, feeling as run down as one can possibly imagine, Dress attended an in-person conference with me. His love for his children was obviously the first thing on his mind until the end. He was a great dad. Chris Dressler was my friend. When Dress was diagnosed, I knew it was bad. I'd heard of glioblastoma before, but in my own naive way, I knew Dress would be different because Dress was different. He drew all of his loved ones closer into him. He wanted fun, laughter, friends, and family. All those things are what he thrived on. There's one conversation we had while messing around with my outboard shortly after his first brain surgery that continues to resonate with me every time I think of it. He said, "Cakes, I feel great right now, but this is only temporary. This will eventually kill me, much sooner than I wanted to. The only thing I think about and worry about is my family, my kids. I want the best for them. I want everything for them to be all right." I don't remember what I said at the time or how I responded. Knowing myself, I probably replied with, "You got a long time left, man. You got a long time left," or something similar to that. Dressler knew. He knew what he was facing and communicated his situation to me very logically, scientifically, like Dress. Now, as a friend, as someone who's standing here with a heavy heart, I promise to support your family in any way that I can. And I know that I'm not the only one. The village that you've built will continue to give back. We'll show up and we'll remember the lessons you've shared. I'm going to miss you, Dress. Cakes.
Beautifully said. I'm gonna put on my super auntie hat, compose myself. Okay. If friends are the family we choose, then these next three speakers were like extra brothers to Dressler. With a combined total of approximately 20 years as roommates. I feel like I need to be Roman. Raise your glass if you've been a roommate of Dressler's. Right? Oh. Needless to say, these next three speakers all have stuff of Dressler's in their house still, from the various apartment moves that he left behind. A blessing now. Three of my best friends and my brother-in-law. McCormick, Schroeder, and Hugh. Please come on up.
I mean, anybody who knows Dressler knows that today we're probably missing our greatest speech teller and storyteller. And so we'll do our best to try. Chris was an amazing storyteller. At any gathering, you'd notice this tall man with a booming voice surrounded by people that were laughing, smiling, totally engrossed in whatever story he was telling. He could take a mundane story and turn it into something completely hysterical and engaging and fun. It was an incredible gift that he had. But Dressler's life was not mundane. He had a knack for collecting fascinating people and then taking them on crazy adventures. Dressler was a man who walked his own path, but to be clear, he never walked it alone. As many of you know, he was also fairly opinionated. And he was never afraid to share those opinions. For example, I remember one day seeing him bundle up to take a ride on a particularly blustery January morning, riding his bicycle to school. And he said, once you start making excuses not to ride your bike, you can always come up with another one tomorrow. And that actually applies to a lot more than just riding your bike, it turns out. I was taught by him, when throwing a party, it's better to end up with twice as much food and drink as you need than to come up one sip or one bite short. On relationships, he said that if someone you're dating doesn't like the way you behave when you're with your friends, they don't like you. And that is a great piece of advice to pass on. And on a run once, he told me, you have to always be making new friends. Actually, I like to jog. It's more of a jog than a run. He told me that you need to always be making new friends as you grow older, because friends will move, they'll pass out of your life, you'll grow apart, or they will pass away. And if you're not making new friends, he said, you'll find yourself growing lonely as you get old. Look around you. Dressler was never going to grow lonely. This is one piece of advice he lived every day of his life. He was always open to new friendships. With that in mind, I'm going to ask a favor of everyone here. Take time today to tell your favorite Dressler story to someone you've never met, someone you haven't seen in a long time, and make a new friend. I think that is an absolutely fantastic way to honor Dressler. To get that process started, I'm going to turn the floor over to Hugh and Schroeder to tell just a tiny fraction and try to keep them somewhat appropriate of their Dressler stories.
I gotta say first, had I heard Wag's speech earlier, I may have changed my format a little bit. Oh. Earlier, you may have asked yourself, is that Motley Crue's Girls, Girls, Girls I just heard directly following Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata? Yes, it was, because that's just how Dressler rolled. Like anything else he took an interest in, his love for and his knowledge of music was not only broad, but comprehensive. Just not always appropriate. As we are here today to celebrate this amazing life, it just seemed natural to me to talk about Dressler's innate ability to bring people together. Dressler was a legendary party thrower. Legendary. Wasn't necessarily a legendary post-party cleaner-upper. But he was inarguably a legendary party thrower. While most would consider a keg of beer in the backyard a party, Dressler had a shot luge. Yeah, I mean, if you're not familiar with a shot luge in the summer, it's a 250-pound block of ice in 90-degree heat, with shots would be poured down these routed tracks to be mixed and chilled simultaneously for the awaiting partygoer to consume. Yeah, easy, right? No, not something you would see at your typical gather. Or Dressler proclaimed that an entire pig roasted on a spit was necessary for this one particular party. So, the day before, he got in his van again and drove out to a farm. We honestly still don't know where. This is totally true, no idea. picked one out, assumably with the owner. Not kidding. See, now I'm gonna say dispatch shot it himself. Now that we know that we can get a little wild here, put it in the back of his van again and brought it back to Vilas. There it went into a 35-gallon garbage can. I just want to believe it was new. Mostly covered with ice, and it spent the night in our kitchen, which was great. Now, I just came up with it. I had to put this in here. I can't even imagine how proud Dressler must have felt to have achieved this somewhat unusual task all by himself. I mean, really, well, if any of you have ever seen Chris shoot skeet, you know that pig had really good odds going into it. So, it's all pretty lucky. Around 2002, and this is still a point of question with all of us, we were hosting a major event at Vilas, a mixed woods. I'm sure some of you have heard of them. It was decided that live music was necessary. So, Dressler hired a band of Irish brothers. Why wouldn't you? Unfortunately, they ended up getting into a fist fight with a non-music loving neighbor of ours. The police were called. It could have gotten out of control, but luckily the drummer was on parole and the neighbor turned out to be a felon, so they both took off. And we can't make this stuff up. I'm not kidding. It's crazy. But other, nearly inimitable parties that Dressler has, devised and created, they're endless, but like his New Year's Eve parties, several mixed wids, I should say several nearly annual mixed wids. They're supposed to be annual, but it doesn't always work out that way. Coffee and scones, and then of course, many first and possibly last pizza experiments. I mean, I could ask for a show of hands of people here that have been to one or many of these events, but I know it isn't necessary because it's clearly all or most of us. Dressler's parties were amazing, no question. But it wasn't because of blocks of ice in July or pigs on a spit, scones, which were good, or even a brawling band of Irish brothers. That all helped, made them fun, but it was the people that made the party. And they were there because of him, much like we are today. Dressler never really had a crowd. He had multiple crowds. And he included them all in whatever he was doing, and he invited them to whatever the event was. And they, or us rather, much like today, want to be around him. I can easily explain to you why I wanted to be around Dress. He was fun. He was interesting. He was undeniably authentic. He made us look pretty smooth around the ladies, quite honestly. A really handy byproduct. But honestly, most of all, he was just a natural teacher. With the exception of my own father, I cannot think of another person that I've learned more from than Chris Dressler. I will miss that, and my kids will miss that. What I can't easily explain to you with just words is why this is such an honor to be up here today. And what an immense honor it was to be Chris's friend. Thank you.
Dressler in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. It's just not possible, is it? Schroeder, McCormick, and I, and we've laughed and we've cried trying to come up with what to say to all of you. We wish you guys could have been there to hear our versions of these memories. As many of you know, over again at the top of our lungs, to anyone who is willing to listen. Fun stories that always pop to the top of my mind are in college, the guy wouldn't do his laundry. He had this enormous unfolded clean pile, and then he had a dirty pile, and he would wait till every bit was dirty. Very, very, very dirty. And he would pack it all in his car all at once. And he'd take it to the laundromat, and then it was back in the unfolded clean pile. He taught me if you're going to start a very hard project or even play a game of foosball, prepay your swear jar. Sandals, summer. Boots, winter. Winter starts the first time it snows. Summer starts the first day in March. If you've changed your footwear, you're not allowed to change it back, even if Mother Nature is trying to tell you otherwise. Clothing in your own home. Well, it really should not be. It's optional. Life is about learning. Learn what interests you when it interests you. It's okay to go to college, get distracted by something you're very, very passionate about. Take your time to get your degree. Get your real job. Quit your real job. Return to what you're passionate about. Just keep learning and keep doing what you love. Dressler was an extrovert. Well, he did like his alone time running or biking or kayaking to reflect or calm down a little bit. As soon as he was done, he wanted to hang out, listen to others, and to teach. He was such an extrovert that he had an open door policy. For the first few months I lived with him, I used to carry a house key. After that, I just didn't bother. We met so many people just because they were at our house when we came home, whether Dressler was there or not. Our couch was for whomever fell asleep first. The garage was for the homeless. Dressler's open door policy was so well known that Coach Meyer didn't even feel obligated to ask permission to throw house parties there when none of us were home. Wow, was Dressler a teacher. Old and young students just loved him. He taught our kids. He helped raise our kids. He praised curiosity. Most of us that asked him a question heard the response, well, that's very interesting. Let's think about that. And then without giving us the answer, he would teach us how to get it. I suspect that everyone in this room was taught something by Doc. He could offer criticism on how to be a better human being in a way that may hurt your feelings, but it never hurt your friendship. He did not complain about his diagnosis. I'm sure if I tried to talk about how unfair all of this is, he would say, well, Huey, we may not like this, but it is the way it is.
One of Dressler's favorite essays was Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. At the early death of Emerson's son, he said, it's not the length of a life that matters, but rather its depth. Looking around here today, listening to these speakers, it's easy to see that Dressler lived a life of incredible depth. From his childhood, through college and rowing, to a successful professional life, to an even more successful academic career. Thousands of students and friends taught and trained. His marriage to fellow adventurer Leslie, and two amazing explorers in training in Wally and Cece. Yes, Dressler's life was as deep and meaningful as anyone has ever lived. But if you'll forgive the hubris, I would like to disagree with Emerson on one main point. It was too short. We have 1,000 stories of this amazing human being, but we all want another 1,000 to tell. We all loved him, and we will all miss him. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, don't worry, I'll be very brief. After all those incredible tributes, I don't have a lot more to say other than thank you. Thank you for being here today to celebrate an extraordinary man that we loved very much. Thank you for your support for our family. This beautiful community carried Dress and me and Cece and Wally through an incredibly awful journey. We miss you and love you very much, Dress. Please join me and raise your glass. Chris Dressler.